And I can share the screen. On joining this session, and this session is hosted by the modeling subcommittee, and we would like to discuss the telco intent model design for this session. Um, all right, hope you can see the screen now. So
Yes,
let me first do, yeah, thank you. So let me first do some background information and a brief introduction of the agenda. Then we will invite our colleagues, and also
Yang-Chu, we're having audio dropouts. I don't know if it's just me.
with the experts to explain, to describe the ongoing works around this area, and we can have a discussion if
I
time
confirm you're
allows.
breaking out.
Have been noticed, I think, intent. Yeah, so if okay, just let me continue. Maybe my web connection is not so good. So I think intent-driven approach has been widely discussed and investigated in many organizations, including several standard bodies and also within ONAP itself. And one of the key things for this intent-driven approach is the intent model itself. I think it's the core for the API design and also how you will use this approach within different use cases. So today the intention is to share the experience in different SDOs and perhaps in different organizations on how this intent model has been designed and help the ONAP community to have a better understanding and design of that. The brief agenda is here. So first, I would like to introduce a bit on the current intent model in ONAP. We have been proposed in the recent release and used in one use case. And then we'll invite Magnus from Ericsson to introduce the model in intent model in TMF, and also Lingli to introduce the intent model in ANSI. And if time allows, we will have open discussion around this area. So the first session is about the current intent model in ONAP. So if you have noticed, we have been discussed this general intent model in the last release, so the release column. And here's a link of that model. Basically, it's referring to 3GPP and TMF intent models to build this general intent model. We call it general model because it's do not restrict itself to certain use cases. It's quite a high level and abstract model that can be used to describe any intent you have. And the real use cases in that release was this intent-based network with CC-BPN. So this model is actually used to describe the intent to build up a VPN tunnel for this use case. And I would just give a brief introduction of this model, and we'll hope you can get more information here. So as you see, this model, the main part describes the intent, and the intent would include this intent expectation. It means it can include several expectations, and each expectation you can describe a target and an object. So for what thing you would like to, what the desired state is, and like when it can be done and whether it has been done. So that kind of information to become one intent expectation. And one intent can include several of them. So you can have different objects and to have different expectation of each object to formulate one intent. And besides the intent expectation, you have this intent context. The context basically means some conditions under which this intent will be fulfilled. So that's for part. And the last part is the fulfillment info, which trying to describe the status of the intent. So whether it's been fulfilled, and if it's not, then what probably is the cause of that. So that's the high level part. And the core part is this intent expectation. And I just list the main parts there. So for the first object is what. So the thing you want describe the intent. So like for example, VNF or a virtual link or any kind of object that ONAP can manage. So that would be your object of that expectation. And then we got this target. So this would like to describe the actual desired state of that object. In particular, it's kind of like metrics for performance of that object. You can describe your SLA expectation or performance expectation or that kind of things to be the second part. So this to formulate the core part of that intention. And then the third part, expectation context. So it's similar to the intent context. It's kind of condition that under which the intent or the expectation would be fulfilled and controlled. And the last part is the fulfillment info. So again, it's similar to this intent fulfillment info and describes the whether this intent expectation is fulfilled, and if not, the possible reasons for that. So basically, this the general model for the intent, and we do get some more details on that wiki page for different attributes as shown below. So you have further attributes to describe what the condition could be, what the context could be for each object and the target. So if you would like to know more, you can just find the wiki page I just shown and find more information there. And I think the intention for this session is also we would like to see if there are some suggestions or comments for this model. And if so, we can further utilize this model to describe some more particular use cases instead of just general one. All right, so that's what I would like to say for the first part. So I see Magnus is also online. Maybe I can handle the part to him.
Yes, thank you. I can share my screen now, right?
Yes, sir.
I guess
Yep.
so.
Let's see if I can bring up the right presentation. Hold on. Yes. Can you see now?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll start at some point. This is a sort of a mix of model and other information from TM Forum. So of course, the purpose of the intent is that you have a service provider that will that is then has intents for, I mean, revenues, security, all the things that he's interested in optimizing. There is a intent from the customer, one customer and another customer, and all of that, all of those intents sort of goes into the autonomous network. And I changed the slide here. I hope you saw that it didn't get stuck. So the most important thing here is maybe the intent for expressing business needs. And there is an intent expression from the user, and that is then transformed into something called the intent ontology. An ontology is a grouping of expectations and how they are related. So the idea is to translate this expectations and desires that a customer has into a more formal language here. And then there is the intent interface operations. In TM Forum, we talk about the intent manager, the intent owner, and the intent manager, that is the intent handler. And we also talk about the different operations here in set, remove, report, and optional, judge, probe, and best. But I don't need to go into those terms. An important part of the TM Forum intent model is that there is a hierarchy of intents. So an initial intent coming from the customer portal will be emerge as a business intent to a business intent manager, and that will then translate the intent into a let's see if I can get the pointer here. Yeah, into another intent using the context and the environment, and so new intent will be sent out to the next domain, to service level intent, and so on. And if you look at the ontology model, here is the interface between the one domain and the other domain. So on the left-hand side here, you see a knowledge base that is used in this domain, and then there is a next domain then. Let's say the service business layer and the service layer. And this domain has its own knowledge base, so it has its intent ontology. And then an intent is sent out, expressed here from one domain to another one. And then, oh, sorry, I was totally wrong. Yeah. Then a report is issued and used then by the intent owner to decide whether this intent is satisfactory handled. And there is a TMF specification 921 that it describes the intent lifecycle management reporting and negotiation. The intent ontology is based on the resource description framework, RDF, and then it's also a TMF intent ontology model, models semantics and not only information. And it's based on logical reasoning axioms in RDF, which is a sort of well established and a mature framework. Maybe better known in the IT world than in the telecom world. And it enables knowledge-centric intent managers. And it also enables intent-based federation of constituent models from multiple sources. And that's also a very central part of the TMF intent proposal, that you should be able to federate models from different SDOs. And if you look at the resource description framework, there are a number of layers. That's in ontology layer, there's a schema layer, metadata layer, and then a data layer. So it's quite sort of, as I said, mature and well described. And there is also in Teamform a layered API information model that you work with the API information model, intent common model, and the intent extension models. So you can work with sort of with a combination of these models. So here at the bottom, it's defined by the OpenAI API project with intent and intent report being generic strings. And then the next layer is the model federation defining the contents of intent and intent report objects. And then the next level is the multi-SDOs, the vendors and operators adding additional vocabulary and semantics. So it's in this way, it's a way to work together and still have a model that holds together. And here's also a picture about the model federation, where you can, for instance, have an intent manager in business operation that will generate an intent for service, and the service operation will then generate an intent for RON, for instance, or transport, something like that. And you have a federation then of that where you can go end to end from the original intent down to the intents that are only valid on the lower level. Yeah, I think I'll stop there. I've given you sort of some understanding of how Teamform has specified this. Thank you.
Thank you, Magnus. And so for the agenda, then is Lingli, can you share take the session?
Yes, sure. Thank you. Actually, I'm responsible for the ETSI part, but I'm afraid I have to say that the intent modeling or intent API specification within ETSI and among several ISGs are all in a very earlier phase. From our understanding, there is a study concluded last December within ISG ENI, which did a gap analysis for the general intent model. And as part of its conclusion, Teamform and 3GPP actually has developed the most mature model and specification for intent. But however, there are substantial differences between these two solutions. And this is one thread for the intent work in ETSI. And the other one is just getting started at the ISG NFV, which is trying.
Sorry, but are you supposed to share something?
No, I'm not sharing anything.
Okay.
I'm just using the oral reporting. And the other thread happening in ETSI is within the ISD NFV, which is just getting started. And it aims to deliver a stage 2 specification on intent modeling and also its API specification for the use cases that are focused on network service orchestration layer, within NV-Mano. And it's just getting started. And I'm sorry, as rapporteur of that work item, I still don't have anything in consensus to share today with you guys. And I think that is all for the current status and information that we can share from the ETSI side.
Sorry, Lingli, can I add something?
Of course, please.
Yeah, the ISG that's called ETSI ZSM, the Zero Touch Management, has just published an intent study.
Well, that is great. It's great to know that. Thank you, Magnus.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Lingli, for this report. And then, so for the agenda is then the open discussion session. I see many people are joining the session, and I'm not sure if you have involved in part of the intent model discussion or intent work in ONAP or in other SDOs. So I would like to hear your opinions on how could we design these models within ONAP or even within this industry on how we can better utilize this technology for all this intent-driven approach. Yeah, so actually the floor is open now. If you have any question on the existing models we have for the approaches in TMF or ETSI, or even just some suggestions for the ONAP, you can. The floor is yours, and you can share any comments or questions here. Right, so
yeah, maybe I can start saying something. I think there is a ongoing discussion on when it comes to the modeling on whether you should use the sort of tradition in telecom in building the model, and that we have used for in many cases, or to adopt a more, like, let's say, IT friendly environment. And the interesting thing with intent is actually that it's in the sort of border of telecom and other sort of IT related technology. So we expect intent to make it easier for companies and environments that are not that used to the telecom environment to be able to utilize and be better connected. So the Team Forum take on this is to use this RDF framework, which is maybe on the IT side of the business, and so that I think is a discussion, ongoing discussion. Then there is also an ongoing discussion of exactly what the intent is, whether it's something that is close to policy, or if it's sort of further and further abstraction in the network. Okay, thanks.
Hey, good morning, Magnus, and the rest of the team. Good modeling presentation. I have one curiosity. Is any SDO or industry body working on identifying atomic level or unitary levels of technology option? For example, a 10 gig port, maybe a unit, one CPU for Mac, maybe a unit, or certain amount of gigabyte of memory, things like that. So where a business intent translate into loosely service intent, and then service intent picks the platforms, and the platform picks the equipment.
I can speak for Team Forum. I think that's the model and the life cycle management areas supports this, but I think the position of Team Forum, that is what you're describing as implementation specific, and it's left to the implementation. So it is not part of the present standards or specifications.
All right, thanks. Are you aware of anybody else looking into standardizing atomic elements?
Oh, in my opinion, I think there's no SDO right now defining this real atomic intent. Well, I would expect SC to touch this area, at least for, I'm not sure if we will have like with how many CPU or exactly how many resources will we have, but I guess SC would touch the at least deployment of those network functions and how to describe this using an intent driven approach. So maybe you can look that later. But yeah, I also see Lingli raised hand. Maybe she can explain more.
Well, actually, I raised hand in response to your first request, to any discussion point. But anyhow, I can give my comment on this one as well. I believe that what you meant by autonomy elements, those are the descriptors or the semantics elements of specific intent, expectation, or what actually Magnus included in the TM Forum's model proposal as the extension, intent extension model, or domain-specific information model. So in TM Forum's context, in its design of common model, it actually takes considerations in the flexibility of extending or including those domain-specific autonomy elements, as you said, described, into its common model. So the common model only specifies its general syntax rules and its organization of different elements. But what are these information elements actually domain specific? If you are dealing with a network service, or if you are dealing with a resource layer, those information elements would be different, and it will be dependent on the context that would not be specified by a general model, but by the domain-specific SDOs. I think there are a number of, SDOs are specifying their metrics, their indicators, and their deployment descriptors, and those are perhaps can be serving as good, input to extending those common models to accommodate those, intent use cases, I think.
Thank you. I think that's where I was going. Because I think for interoperability in an MNO model, you may have service outsourcers for different segments of the network or compute platforms. So having a common descriptor model really makes it easy to expand the intent to execution automation.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. And actually, that is, one of the points that I would like to make. So I see that in creating the standards around intent, it is really important to understand that, the customer intent or the network intent actually can be expressed at different layers. And from the customer intent, it needs to be decomposed into different layers, either in the format of specific lifecycle management operations, as ONAP already supported, or as different layers of intent. And those are actually the approach that we have been pursuing also in ONAP community. because from the SDO's perspective, each of the SDO are actually focusing exclusively on its own domain. For TN Forum's part, except for its intent initiative, or AN initiative, I should say, Autonomous Network Initiative, it also very much focused on the the OSS side or BSS side. So it has very little influence on other SDOs working on the resource layer to specify or define their intent model. So this is a huge obstacle I see to actually to implement the common model and extend it with specific extension model, because that actually requires close coordination and also very how can I put it synchronized collaboration among different SDOs, which is actually lacking. I don't see that happening, and that also explains why CGPP has been specifying a quite different intent model starting from I think release 16, and we see that there is a merger happening, but it is quite slow and does not guarantee a common model and as the ultimate goal, because they are working very separately. But I think within the ONAP community, we have such unique advantage here is that ONAP architecture actually covers different layers. We have service orchestrator, we have different controllers, and those are actually working at different layers, including the service layer as well as the resource layer. So here we actually have this utility, and we also have a general policy, like infrastructure and also, closed loop initiative. Those are very good assets that we can take from a more implementation oriented perspective to try and verify whether or not those common model approach with domain specific extensions could work. And that is the first point that I would like to make. And the second one is that despite the fact that we are also, firm believers of this common approach, I think that in addition to extensions in the modeling side or in the stage 2 specification part, there might be also different approaches taken in stage 3 specification, because yes, there might be a composition or decomposition flow happening across different layers when you are actually serving a customer intent. However, those intents, in interpretation and those intents handling at different layers might involve different procedures, or those intent handlers at different layers might have quite different capabilities. Some might possess, like large computation or, AI equipped capabilities that will enable them to do reasoning that could be supported by RDF. But however, at a very lower level of the network, for example, at the resource layer or even at an element layer, those capabilities might not be needed, or from another perspective, it might not be possessed in a very limited hardware infrastructure basis. So we expect that there might be quite different implementations in those stage 3 specifications regarding the while representation of those information elements at different layers. And also perhaps there might also be differences between different domains at the same level, because traditionally different SDOs in different domains have their own data representation specifications for their management, cases. And those specifications, those data models could be leveraged and be representing intent model. But that does not to say that we have to also unify the stage 3 specifications or the WOW representation of those data formats. And that is the second point that I would like to make also. And I think,
You think there is a room for?
that is what we see for this one.
You think there's a room for some sort of interlayer API standards like netconf, where the north layer asks for description, and the south layer provides their description, service description capability or descriptors. This way you don't need to unify, you just need to work out the APIs.
Yes, I think so, yes. And we can leverage netconf. Netconf is a very general protocol. But how to represent those information elements, we might have, like different approaches as well.
Yep, thank you, over.
All right, anybody else who wants to express your opinions? Well, if not, maybe Magnus, I have a question for you. So I think you are saying that we have choice between the telco intent model and the IT ones. And you said TMF is choosing the RDF basically, I think, considering the to be open to the IT. I guess you mean the tool sets or even the software, that kind of things, to be easier to adopt such technology. So the first, maybe the first question is, do you really think those RDF model are maybe can be used differently in telco world, or I should just say, is there's a big difference between the telco and the IT ones? So what's your opinion on that one? And
yes,
also,
thanks.
Yeah, maybe you can answer first.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I think, I mean, if you using a language is so often sort of based on your tradition and your preferences. I think they why Team Formus pointed to RDF is because it is a well-established, let's say, developed framework. And it has, as you said, it has a lot of software connected, and there is a lot of tools that is also serving that. In the telco, we would use maybe UML based and a bit different in the interfaces. Instead of having intent owner and intent handler, you would have a service producer and a service consumer. But I think I think it's quite, when it comes to intent, you have to understand that there are two directions of this. One is pointing towards the traditional telco operators, and one direction is pointing to the enterprise environments and the IT environments that is supposed to take advantage of intent. So I think we are actually at that crossroad between a telco world and a larger IT environment. I hope I answered some of your question.
Yeah, thanks. But I think the IT world is changing quite fast. And do you really think so? Is it possible if we just follow those tools in let's say environment, and then sometimes they change their design or a new technology occurs? Should
Yes, of course.
Yeah, maybe we should more look like the business part, look like if RDF can really express or suitable for a certain area of the use cases we have in telco businesses. I mean, like deployment of network functions, also configuration of that part, like update, upgrade, or even creation of certain businesses like slices.
Yeah, but I think maybe I didn't express that very well, but RDF, the one great advantage of RDF is that it supports this model federation with very little sort of dependency or minimal dependency. So you can adapt to whatever model you have in your specific domain, and you can connect that to the end-to-end properties of RDF. So and that's a debate as well, whether intents are more local or if they are end-to-end. But I think if you accept that an intent is serving an end-to-end use case or a service, end user service, then RDF has that property to support that. And then it's always like this. I mean, you can do it in many ways, and it's not really the sort of super best technology that always wins. It is normally the one that is okay for most people, and that gets adopted to be a generally accepted technology. So the agreeing on a common solution is actually more important than picking the sort of the optimal solution for everyone. And
Yeah,
in this
totally
case, you have
that.
to, yeah. And in this case, you actually have the task of making an agreement between different industries, different companies, different domains that are rather, yeah, that hasn't been sort of hasn't cooperated in to any great extent before.
So have you investigated making bridges like between this perhaps like UML-based intent and RDF-based intent? Is it possible to?
Sorry, I didn't get your first part of the sentence.
Maybe I just is there a way to bridge these two kinds of solutions, or just like transformation or that kind of thing?
And there is, in the sense that a UML based model would easily fit into an RDF model. So that has been shown by the TM Forum team that you can federate them, you can work together.
So the federation doesn't. Yeah. So I just want to say, so the federation doesn't require you to use RDF as well. Is that?
Well, yeah, you have to have one little part. You have, I mean, the root of the model has to be RDF in this case, and then the various extensions and the domain specific or SDO specific models can be of another sort. But
all right.
that's in the, I mean, that's inevitable, because if you want to form an end-to-end sort of solution, you have to have some kind of foundation for bringing the models together.
Okay. So basically, you mean if the root model is RDF based, so you can then have domain-specific models using maybe another language. But
yes, that's
if
correct.
Okay, so it's possible. But if you want to have a more like end-to-end total models, then it's better to have all the models written in RDF.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Doesn't require that.
Needed. Okay.
So I think that's no, it's the other way around, actually. That you, as if you build a model for your domain, you don't necessarily have to be aware of how the rest of the model or the upper layers look like. You can adapt your model to the end-to-end model.
All right, thank you. So maybe let me just ask if there's any further questions or comments we would like to have today. If no, then maybe we can end up here, and just thank you all for joining, and thanks for the discussion. Hopefully we can enhance the models we have, and hopefully, like Magnus suggested, maybe we can federate them someday. All right. Hearing none, then maybe let's just close. And thanks, Kenny.